how dependent will marketing become on AI? And is it going to be more AI driven than human driven in the future?
AI is an enabler, right? And it is very right. Possibly we all get fatigued by the AI content per se, right? But I would be fairly happy if the AI is used for the purpose it is being built for. So data, for example. But if you start using AI to generate content, if you're compensating creativity with AI, I think we are not there yet. We have to use and get more and more into AI to understand the consumer dynamics. But we also have to have the human aspect, the art part of it for creating the content.
Today on Marketing Growth Fuel, we're joined by Nitin Rai, Head of Marketing APAC at AMS, and one of the region's most influential B2B marketing leaders. With over 2 decades of experience across IBM, TCS, HCL, and IGT, Nitin has built a reputation for blending creative storytelling with data-driven strategy. At AMS, he's shaping the future of talent marketing across APAC, driving thought leadership, brand growth, and demand generation in the fast-evolving world of GCCS, technology, and consulting. Let's get started.
Welcome back to TechDogs Marketing Growth Fuel. The podcast where we go beyond funnels and frameworks to uncover the people and purpose behind great marketing. Welcome to the show, Nitin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Looking forward to a good conversation.
So, Nitin, obviously, you've done this for almost, I think, 2 decades or so now. I think the first thing that I want to do is talk about, how marketing has transformed. Gone are the days when you were, doing the billboards, and you were attempting Google ads, and everything to do with brand, ATL, BTLs. The world of marketing has evolved so much. More than that, I think what has happened is, the role of the modern marketer keeps on changing even more rapidly, with technologies just coming in every day. So you worked across TCS, you were at IBM, I believe, at some point. Now you're at AMS, at the helm of things. I want to understand from you, what do you think has changed in modern marketing, and what does modern marketing leadership look like today?
I think you put out a very valid point. When I started my career, we were actually looking at, I used to get paper cuttings of the ads that were served, right? So across India, they will collate that and send to me. Today, you get that information in real time, right? So there are elements which have changed, but there are some elements which are still the same, right? What has changed is access to data, access to client insights, access to how your campaigns are performing in real time. That has changed. What that has helped us do is do hyper-personalization of our messaging, right? So we now know that in an organization, because we're doing B2B, in an organization, what does a procurement function look like, or what is the finance function looking at from a product perspective? What has changed is you are still appealing to a human psyche, right? You are still looking at how a person buys. While it's a complex buying cycle in B2B, it still is appealing to a human being, despite the merits of the product or the service that you're offering. So I think that's what's constant, but a lot has changed. Yeah.
Right. And how do you think, because you mentioned the way, obviously data has come to a lot of foray, the way we measure success has changed as well. And amongst all of this, marketers are always considered to be the creative guys. So how do you kind of, balance that creativity, the data and the metrics that you have to track as a modern marketer?
So I think it has become more difficult for us because earlier there would be a one single brand campaign, right? And that is expected to appeal to everybody across channels. When we talk about hyper personalization, what is also important is now you have micro segments. And that data is important only if you are creating content around those micro segments, right? So now in a single organization, you might have to do 5 or 6 messages, right? So that's the more important part, the more difficult part, right? And that's the beauty of it, right? So now you are targeting multiple functions with different messaging. Even the content types have changed, right? So earlier we used to have a billboard, like you were mentioning earlier, or just a paper ad. Now, as per our research we did earlier, there are around 8 types of content consumption patterns, right? So you can't just say, I'll do an infographic, or I'll just do a video. You have to, in an ideal scenario, do all of them, because to a large extent, you really don't know what kind of content your consumer is going to consume. So it's the best that you do that. I think the success is when you can see the journey, right? I mean, now there are tools which are available, which you can track, what is the journey of your customer, and if you can see them consuming or engaging with your content on various platforms before they make a purchase decision, right? I think that's how we see the success of multiple touch points being consumed by the consumer.
Got it. And talking about success, right? So if you look at it, about 10 years back, success looked very different. What it meant was, how visible is your brand? But I think today it's changed quite a bit, right? Now you're talking metrics like engagement. You're talking about watch times, and because obviously content types have changed. And at the same time, you're also talking about results. And do you think this is all valid in the context of marketing as a function for modern marketing?
Absolutely, right. I mean, that is the sole purpose from a brand perspective. So a lot of those vanity marketing matrices are now not getting too many favors from the board, right? I mean, you may talk about MQLs, you may talk about engagement rates and all of that, but eventually what they want is your customer really understanding your story, right? Are they bought into your story? I mean, they may or may not eventually buy. I mean, of course, the end goal is to buy, but even if they're not buying, but just showing that, I had so much of an open rate and all of that, it is not getting any favors now with the leadership. They want engagement. They want that the customer understands our story. He or she may buy today, may not buy today, right? They may go into another organization, buy there. So engagement, understanding our positioning, understanding the depth of our product, trusting us is the most important success matrix at this point in time.
But don't you think that this whole ROI-driven marketing, and we were talking about marketing in art and science a little earlier, do you think the ROI-driven marketing is actually taking away, maybe not taking it, probably open up a little more, do you think ROI-driven marketing is narrowing or expanding, creativity in campaigns?
See, I think while creativity is important, focus on ROI is also important, right? I mean, because we are in business, right? And our objective is to generate more business or facilitate more business or growth. So you can't have a very utopian creative idea, which is not translating into business metrics, right? So we have to be conscious of ROI. Right. But we have much more tools, like I said, so the creativity should come in at, like we said, creating multiple content types, creating more, integrated campaigns and stuff like that. That's where you need to restrict creativity to some extent and get an ROI. But yeah, I mean, an over focus on ROI also sometimes hampers creativity. But I feel ROI is still important. Yeah.
And in the past 2 decades, I'm sure there are a lot of marketing tactics that have come and gone. And some have stood the test of time. Is there any one or two in specific you feel from the old school, do you think need to make a comeback?
That's an interesting
maybe
question. Yeah.
Perhaps as a marketer, people have not thought and given up on that, altogether, because, everybody's living in this world where we're saying, okay, everybody's doing this, I need to do this.
I think that FOMO is unfortunately a reality in marketing as well, and a lot of us chase what's the latest glittery tool that is available in the market at this point in time. We should do away with that. But I think it still is, the ethos of marketing still remains the same. The human touch, the empathy part of it, right? So are we still appealing to the buyer, right? And that I think remains, and we need to have a very strong focus on that. Tools are fantastic. They enable us to understand the consumer better, but eventually, are we really going back to them with that understanding and creating, stories that appeal to each sub-segment or a micro-segment?
So back in the day, marketing was not considered to be a growth lever to business. It was primarily more sales. And that has changed. And I think what is also happening at the same time is that brands are now trying to create campaigns that resonate with audiences, while the audience is also saying that I don't want to be sold to. it's almost like the conversation now needs to be two ways.
Right.
Okay, so then we're talking about evolution of marketing as a growth lever, and then you're also talking about marketing evolving to a two-way dialogue as a one-way dialogue, which is usually the case or has been the case before. And I think 2025 and the next decade, I don't think people want to be sold to, because they are done with the bombardment of ads, and without giving away a brand name. I think we recently concluded the Asia Cup, and for one specific brand just bombarded so much content at some point, I don't want to be sold to. If you're able to give me some insights about that product, I think it would help. So the question I have for you is that, how do you think marketing today can run campaigns that go beyond just bombarding pieces of information?
Right. So I think to the earlier part of your question, I have been fortunate to work with really mature organizations like IBM and TCS and HCL, where we have always seen marketing as a growth engine, right?
Yes.
There were really well integrated functions between sales and marketing, and we would always co-create programs, right?
Nice.
I have fortunately not worked in environments where marketing is running their own shop and sales is then coming and we're haggling about whether this is a relevant MQL or not MQL.
Yeah.
So for me, MQL to SQL ratio has always been very healthy because we were working always very coherently. So I think what we do at AMS, because that's the most recent example that I would talk about, when we talk about campaigns, they are not necessarily about the services that we offer, right? Because we are in the space of talent and there are a lot more elements around talent that touch human beings, right? Diversity, for example, is one. So we do a lot of campaigns and a lot of investment in resources of leadership and producing those content types. But we are not appealing to the audience just because we want to generate sales, right? We want to establish AMS as a holistic thought leader in the space of talent, right? So we do a lot of non-product, non-service related, campaigns as well. Just recently, we concluded a roundtable where we did not put out a single slide about AMS, right? It was purely about conversations because we want to understand the audience, right? We want them to engage. We want them to understand us, but not preach to them, right? So you are very right. Most of the platforms now are not monologues; they are dialogues. But I would also like to cautious, but in a B2C space more so, it is a tricky game because you have to do an online reputation management because the things also get into negatives. They can get out of hand. But yes, to your earlier question, a success could also be measured when you have a very healthy dialogue with the brand, and the brand is not necessarily the corporate handle, so to speak, on LinkedIn. It could also be our leaders, right? So if our leaders are out there in the market, they are talking, and if they are eliciting response from people and people are engaging on that, that's also a good success matrix. Multi-directional, dialogue, I would say.
When we're talking about this dialogue, I think we have to give due credit to the platforms who's facilitated. But I think the likes of an Instagram or the likes of a TikTok, our attention spans and your customers' attention spans are also reducing. I think, was it TikTok, I think, who pioneered the 30-second reels, and then the 60 seconds, and then the 90 seconds, which was very different when we did it back in the day, right? You could watch an 30-minute conversation and you'd still be okay with it. But now, in the age of fleeting attention spans, I think the bigger challenge for brands today is going to be, how do I create content that resonates and within a fraction of 30 seconds?
Right.
What is the approach that you recommend while creating content? Or should you say, as a brand, listen, I don't want to get in this space where, this person's attention spans is so much, but I have so much to talk, so let's not do this. Let's focus on other content types that allow me to build a narrative and a story.
I think that's a very valid point. And, with the thumb scrolling the screen at the speed of light, that's becoming an even more challenging task for us marketers. And the attention span is reducing significantly. I mean, last year possibly it was 8 seconds, now it is already 5 seconds. What we have realized is that you will have to create multiple content types, but your first touch point cannot be a long format content, right? You have to start with a short format content. If it appeals to the audience in the first 5 seconds, then you introduce them to a slightly longer format content, and then you introduce them to a even longer format content. In B2B, anyways, the sales cycle is long, right? And therefore the consumption of content is across variety of content types. So the initial hook, yes, has to be, the first creative on LinkedIn or your first 30 seconds or even 10 seconds on the reel. But then you keep introducing them to deeper and deeper content, right? And then eventually the largest matrix is, and we see the success most is when they start downloading our white papers, right? So, but if you introduce the white paper at first, you are going to fail. So you have to create hooks for people to get to understand what you are trying to tell them, or the pain point that you're solving, and then eventually you have to have a journey that takes them to long format content so that they understand a lot better. That's also important because nowadays I think Gartner says only 17-18% of the sales cycle time is actually with the salesperson, right? The remaining is off the sales purpose. So that's where we come into play, right? And therefore, like I said, have your content through the various cycles of the buying cycle, and of course have short and long and medium format as well.
Very interesting point that you talked, is a lot of the sales cycle is moving away from the sales, and I think a couple of months back I had read, I think again by Gartner, we are moving to self-serve. Okay, like $1 billion deals today are happening on a self-serve platform. Okay, and then now just again, so you're working with attention spans. Okay, now in terms of the buying cycle, it's gone away from sales. Now self-serve is becoming more important. You not only have to compete with the likes of Google, whom you were trying to rank before, but now you have to compete with the likes of a ChatGPT, where am I being cited? Is also the question. And I was having this interesting conversation yesterday. So I said, about 8-9 years back, you would still have that conversation about let's Google that. Why don't you search for that? Okay.
Right.
And now I think the vocabulary is changing. Like, why don't you ChatGPT it?
Absolutely.
Okay, or why don't you ask AI? And as a modern marketer, it just creates a lot more of challenges, right? Because now you had one platform back in the day, Facebook, then went on to LinkedIn, then went on to TikTok, then Instagram, then now YouTube Shorts, and then YouTube long form format, and then you need to be present on, other publishing sites because those are watering holes, where your audiences might come in. At the same time, you have to make sure that your site has a self-serve ability, to give them enough information to be able to have a conversation with you. And then finally, you also have to do this piece where you have to create content which LLMs will quote you for. How do you as a marketer navigate, or as a brand navigate all of this?
So I think that's where the creativity part comes in, right? We were talking about science versus art. I think that's where the art of it comes in. And I think that's what is the most interesting part of it, right? So like I said, from a navigation perspective, it is obviously you have to have a multi-channel approach or a multi-content format approach. You can't just do one format of content. But how are you repurposing the same content in various times and various messages and all of that? I think that's what is evolving and exciting to me.
Okay. And now let's build on what we've discussed so far, right? So, I think the last couple of years, maybe I think year and a half in specific, the rise of AI tools has disrupted marketing the most.
Absolutely, yeah.
More than anything else. Okay. And we talk a lot about democratization of creation of content, and it could be visuals and written content as well. Okay. But don't you think that it's upsetting the creative rhythm of marketing?
No, I would believe contrary, because this is so earlier, the creative guy was sitting in the silo and trying to do what he or she perceived of the world, right? AI is enabling you with insights like never before, right? So now you know exactly what time of the day, which place or the city that the content is being consumed, which device it is being consumed from. So now your creativity is boundless, I would say. Earlier you were shooting in the dark. You could be very creative guy, but you still did not have the insights. Now you can customize all your communication basis the data that you're getting. So I think AI is a big enabler, both from serving the content and also understanding the consumption patterns.
There's a specific research that I want to quote now. A Statista survey from 2024 actually says that the consumer comfort of brands using AI in the last year alone has dropped, from 57% to 46%, which means that consumers don't want brands to use AI. But AI brings in, like you said, opens up a lot more of avenues. Purely from an automation perspective, or being able to look at multiple avenues of content creation, brainstorming, it does a lot more. Okay. So now the question, I mean, in that simplest sense, is going to be how dependent will marketing become on AI? And is it going to be more AI driven than human driven in the future? Because if AI has the ability, in the sense of being able to tie in so many aspects of it, right? So right from understanding consumer psychology, to, like you said, which geographies, what type of content is consumed, and what's working and what's not working. Then what's the role of the human? Or it's still going to be the other way around, where human drives this entire piece?
So I think you will have to understand that AI is an enabler, right? And it is very right. Possibly we all get fatigued by the AI content per se, right? But I would be fairly happy if the AI is used for the purpose it is being built for, right? So data, for example, a very simple thing. If you serve me an ad from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., I am happier. As an example, right?
Yeah.
So if you're using AI for that kind of insight, I don't think there is anything wrong. But if you start using AI to generate content, right? If you're compensating creativity with AI, I think we are not there yet, right? So that's why that fatigue sets in, and that's why you see people are wary of robot calls and scripts which are also narrated, the videos created with AI, speakers and all of that. So I think we'll have to weigh the two. We have to use and get more and more into AI to understand the consumer dynamics, but we also have to have the human aspect, the art part of it for creating the content, like I've said in the past, right? We have to marry the two a lot more. What is also important is AI will enable us to know what is being consumed and what is the target segment that we want to, right? If you really go into the models for AI, right, you will see that there are very interesting cohorts that get developed when the AI model gets into picture, right? So you may not have thought that there is a correlation between an A and a Z as a consumer, right? So those kind of correlations are coming together, and that gives us a lot more insight. But you have to keep AI at the understanding part of it and creativity in creating the content part of it. If you marry the two, I think that's the best place to be.
I'm just going to steer away into a very different industry altogether. But Taylor Swift in the US, I don't know, she's a global icon singer. She launched a new album very recently, and she's been a spoken advocate of why AI is not good. Because obviously, you're talking about creators themselves. And in her very recent video launch, or the launch that she did, there was AI content, AI generated videos, which was rightly called out by a lot of people.
Right.
Okay. Now here's the conundrum that we're trying to solve, right? So at one point, every one of us, including marketeers, value the creativity that we bring to the table, and I think that makes us human, that makes us unique as against maybe an AI machine tool out there. But now, obviously, there was Google's Nano Banana. Okay, then there was Sora, and then I think China has released one very recently, which is completely free.
Yeah.
And as much as it democratizes creativity and content creation, an example of where people don't want to see AI content, where they expect authentic content from the brand, is something that marketers will constantly have to solve for.
Right.
How does a marketer ensure that to his end audience, and especially in the B2B space, you don't come across as a brand that is just relying on AI generated content to drive a conversation on a narrative?
Right. So I think a very valid point. All of us are in that space where we are wary of AI generated content, and that's why the word personalization, everybody keeps hearing the word personalization, and personalization at scale again is very difficult. When we used to talk about personalization at scale earlier, when we were talking about a decade ago, we were talking about Excel's using mail merge, and therefore,
True,
it is
true.
hi Nitin, and the mail is still the same, right?
Yeah.
So you can use AI, but you have to understand to what extent you want AI and creativity, right? So you need to create content very quickly, use LLMs, right? And that's fair. But don't trust it completely. and how many sub-segments do you want to create, read through, have a human in the loop always, and read through the content and see whether there are bots creeping in and the bot language creeping in. I think that will help you stay relevant and contextual to the kind of cohort that you are creating from a personalization perspective. The important part, plus also you have done your majors in that. I think the biggest tech companies are hiring data science specialists, but also human psychologists, right? I mean, that's where the play comes in, right? That's where the creativity or the human angle comes in. How do you understand the psyche of a human who's consuming your content? And then how can you replicate into a campaign? Campaign is just one part of the overall gamut of marketing, but even in the campaign, right? How can you appeal to the psyche of a human is going to be really important, is what I feel. Yeah.
Got it. So great, Nitin. I think this has been a great conversation so far. We've obviously touched upon how market has been evolving. As a modern marketer, what are some of the things that you ought to do, and especially to actually stay ahead, because I think everything's changing by the minute. I think the moment you've kind of said, "Oh, this has started working for me," there's something out there which is already come saying, "Okay, now as a marketer, perhaps need to master that as well." So before we wrap up the question, I want to play this really fun segment that we call the marketing mashup, this or that game. It would be 10 quick questions. We want to understand your instincts as a marketer. Okay. I will give you two options. You just need to choose one very quickly. And obviously you can't choose both. And,
that's
and you can't choose neither. So let me know when you're ready and we'll go for that.
Sure. Bring it on.
Okay. The first one, growth mindset or creative instinct?
I would have chosen both, but since that's not an option, I would say creative instinct.
Brand storytelling or performance marketing?
Brand storytelling.
Okay. Data dashboards or customer conversations?
Customer conversations.
Okay. Strategy decks or on-the-fly executions?
Again, my default answer would have been both. But if I had to choose between the two, execution is more important than strategy.
Okay. Something we touched upon earlier, campaigns or communities?
Communities.
Okay. Again, something that we touched on, likes and clicks or loyalty and trust?
Loyalty and trust.
Okay. Thought leadership content or user-generated content?
That's a really tough one.
Yeah. I figured for me as well, if I was asked this question, I would probably
see, UGC or user-generated content is an ideal scenario, but really tough to get to. But if I have to choose between the two, of course, user-generated content. But in the current scenario, thought leadership is possible.
Content, obviously. Personalization at scale or hyper-relevance?
I think one leads to the other, right? Because personalization without relevance is meaningless.
AI insights or human emotions?
Again, you're putting all the questions.
Interestingly, I think what's happening is the conversation that we've had so far is really distilling down to these questions. And
absolutely.
You've kind of given insights into what you feel. For example, you talked about psychology, and now I have a question right for you where you already spoken AI insights are going to be important. So this is fun. I think they just really shaped up really nice. AI insights or human emotions?
AI insights will lead to better understanding of human emotions, right? So, I mean, end of it, yes, it is human emotions, but enabled by AI.
Planned messaging or organic dialogues?
Again, ideal scenario, organic dialogues, but that's an ideal world. Till we reach there, planned messaging.
Fair, makes sense. I would say no different. And the final one, the future of marketing, more machine or more human?
More human.
Okay. Before we let you go, and this is in the context of you being at AMS as well. If your brand voice had to be represented by a fictional character, someone that totally gets your tone and your values, who would it be and why?
So this is as Nitin Rai or as AMS?
As AMS,
okay.
Because you're obviously associated with the brand.
Right. So see, I would
a character,
of course, a character. Yeah. So I would say Tony Stark. The reason being he is purpose driven but still soft at heart, right? I mean, he has he's innovative yet is not shying away from failures, right? So bold, intelligent, not shying away from failures, not shying away from creativity is why I would love him to be. But that we'll also have to look at budgets.
Absolutely. And this question actually gives us some of the wildest answers. We've covered Marvel, we've covered DC as well. I personally have covered Cartoon Network. Maybe perhaps I'm too old school. So we've had answers ranging from Wonder Woman to Tony Stark to Batman to Superman. In fact, even Winnie the Pooh at some point. And whenever I ask, I think there was only one individual asked me, what would you say? And I said, it's probably Scooby-Doo. And they asked me, why would you say that? I said, I think, as a brand and at TechDogs, we love adventures, and in each of these adventures, there are learnings. For example, this conversation in itself is an adventure, and there is so much learnings that we're going to take away from here, for not only for ourselves, but for our audiences. And, if you've followed Scooby-Doo, I'm sure, a lot of our audiences may not necessarily know it, but at the end of everything that happened in that episode, Shaggy, Scooby-Doo and that entire gang kind of figured something out and, were able to achieve something. And that's exactly what we are trying to do at TechDogs as well. But great, Nitin, it was, an absolute honor and at the same time fun having you on the TechDogs Marketing Growth Fuel podcast. I really appreciate all the insight that you've shared. Any parting thoughts?
My pleasure being on this conversation. I really enjoyed the conversation as well. Some of the questions were really thought-provoking. Don't have a ready answer, but yes, it kept, it has triggered some thoughts on how I would want to see. I think the parting thought is that some of us who have had a longer tenure in marketing have had also the privilege of doing it the old school and then, adopting and integrating AI into stuff. For, people who are looking at marketing as a career, don't be very tech savvy, but then don't get obsessed with technology alone. Right? Understand the consumer, understand the art of storytelling. And then when you bring the two together, that's where the real success is going to be.
True, absolutely. And I think that's the same conversation I have with my team today. And I think there are two specific skill sets. And this is not just marketing, I think across the board, which perhaps are, for whatever reasons, becoming not so evident anymore. And I think the first one is critical thinking. And the second is your analytical thinking.
Right.
I think a lot of the marketers and everybody whom I've spoken to are so heavily reliant on ChatGPT and they trust it so much.
Absolutely.
That the whole human intuition, the ability to critically look at things and say, is this right, is this wrong, or to able to be analyzed is going away. So I completely, agree with on what you said. But great, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate this. Was fantastic.
Thank you for having
speaking to you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, or your favorite podcast app. Catch past episodes and more at techdogs.com. See you next time.